Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to make a video on how I upgraded a long-geared V18B LS hydro transmission to ITR B16 spec, short gearing with LSD. For the longest time, I was daily driving my LS VTEC EG with an LS transmission, and I knew I wanted to get shorter gearing to make it more fun to drive. As you already know, shorter gearing makes it easier for the engine to accelerate, get you into the power range quicker for NA engines, and the RPMs don't drop as far when upshifting to the next gear, keeping you in the VTEC range. So obviously, all these benefits, it's going to come at a cost, right? The LS transmissions with the super long gears are cheap, and the ITR B16 transmissions are crazy expensive and hard to find. I've seen some going for around 3K and higher now, so I had a choice to make. Pony up for an ITR trans if I could find one. This doesn't even guarantee that it's in good shape, or the seller is just lying about what it is and trying to scam you. Or my other option was to build one myself using an LS transmission that was cheap and readily available. So I picked the build and was also excited to use this as a learning experience, as I had not had any experience rebuilding transmissions up to this point. And just as a heads up, I embarked on this adventure a few years ago, so I don't have any actual footage of the rebuild, but I do have a bunch of pictures I took during the process and all of the new parts that went into the build. I do have some footage of the spare LS transmission parts I have that came out of the transmission as examples. Be sure to stick around to the end and I'll show you the complete list of all the parts you need to upgrade a LS or GSR transmission to ITR B16 spec gearing. Also, for any of my TSX followers, I'm preparing to do a similar rebuild of my TSX transmission with K20A DC5 ITR gearing, so look out for that in an upcoming video on that, hopefully in a few months. So first I wanted to walk through and explain some basics of how a transmission functions and what the main parts are that make up a front-wheel drive manual transmission. There are two shafts inside the transmission, the main shaft and the counter shaft. So here's a close-up of the gears and how the shifting functions. On the left side, the sleeve and the hub are locked to the main shaft, and on the right side, those gears are locked to the counter shaft. So when the sleeve moves to engage a gear, it then locks the two shafts together in that particular gear. Here's a close-up of the synchros and the friction surfaces on the gears. A main shaft gear and a counter shaft gear make up the overall gear, and the count of teeth on the counter shaft divided by the count of teeth on the main shaft make up the gear ratio. Here's a close-up of some of the parts that you want to look at when inspecting a transmission for excessive wear. So this is a second gear, and the sleeve teeth are completely trashed. So you want to make sure they're, you know, have a nice triangular shape with a sharp point on them, or else the sleeve isn't going to engage very well. Looking at the hub here, you want to make sure there's not excessive gouging on the hub, which will keep it from the sleeve from sliding very well along it. And on the sleeve, you want to look at these teeth here to make sure there's not excessive wear as well. So here's the parts list you need to upgrade a GSR transmission to ITR B16 spec. The GSR is fairly straightforward as you only need the gear sets to swap in. All the other internals are identical GSR to ITR. So the forks, the sleeves, the hubs, the synchros, they're all the same. The synchros are kind of like maintenance items though, so if your trans is high mileage and worn, you may want to change them out along with all the bearings. But I didn't list them as it's not entirely necessary. A few important things to note: to upgrade second gear to the 2.105 gear ratio, you need the entire main shaft, as the main shaft side of the second gear set is part of the main shaft. Upgrading the GSR second is a must. It's actually the same ratio as the LS second gear, so it's crazy long. The main shaft third gear has a removable sleeve hat, so you may only need the gear if the sleeve hat is in good shape. This design is nice since if you have shifting problems, you only need to swap out to a new hat. The Synchrotech, I believe, sells a fourth gear that has this same design as well. And the last thing is adding an LSD of your choice. Will likely be a direct swap if you opt for the ITR or the GSR specific LSD. Now let's take a look at what you need for an LS transmission to upgrade to ITR B16 spec. It gets pretty complicated here. What I have listed here is in addition to what you need for the GSR. For the LS, you'll need the 3/4 shift fork, 3/4 sleeve and hub, third and fourth gear synchros. These are all larger on the GSR ITR B16 versus the LS. You also need the second gear synchro since the GSR ITR B16 uses a dual cone style synchro. For the LSD and final drive, you'll need to decide which LSD you're going to use because the ring gear diameters are different between the GSR ITR and the LS. If you're going to use a ITR LSD, then you'll need a GSR or ITR final drive as they use the same size ring gear. If you're going to go with an LSD design for an LS, you'll need to stick with the LS final drive or a final drive design for the LS differential. The last thing I have listed here is the outer case. Since I had swapped in a GSR countershaft, I ran into some clearance issues with the C-clip in the LS outer case engaging the top bearing on the countershaft with the groove in it. Whatever I tried wasn't able to get the C-clip to lock using the LS case. I finally came to the conclusion that I needed a GSR outer case, and once I picked one of those up, the case closed up as it should. So countershaft and the outer case has some slight clearance differences between the different versions. So that pretty much wraps up all of the major parts that you need to upgrade your gearing in your GSR or LS transmission. It's definitely a pretty involved project, but if you have access to the parts, it is doable. I would recommend getting new OEM Honda parts if possible, or Synchrotech from my experience. They are close to OEM quality and they make just about every part. You can get the parts individually from Synchrotech as well, which is also nice. The ZealWorks website has a really nice calculator that you can use to compare gear ratios, and it'll tell you, what the differences are, RPM wise and speed wise. So that's a tool that I like to use to figure out which gear ratio makes a sense for, my situation. So that's a wrap on this video. Hopefully you found this helpful, and if you enjoyed, what I was able to go over, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more in the future. Thank you.